much love the word multi-plot.
That was 7 years ago.
So maybe you could try to put this into a more geopolitical, global context. What might be the consequences of this new positioning of United States for the whole international order, for trade, for economic priorities of other regions, and so on and so on?
You should not have asked. You should not have asked, because you see the way I'm basically a man that has been working in the financial markets all his life. And when you're in the financial markets, you have to, you're not interested in feelings, impression. Either the damn thing goes up or it goes down. I mean, there is no subtleties. There is no such touching as losing money in a nice way. If we lose money, so you have to be empathic, you have to be tough on your analysis. So I'm going to try to make in front of you a little analysis of where the world is going. You may or may not accept it, but so you will basically say the way I think. So the first thing I will tell you is that what happened since the election of Trump, it's absolutely obvious. The United States have stopped being an empire. Since 1945, they wanted to be an empire, and they have decided to become again a nation state. And they want to create Fortress America. So basically, I interpreted what Mr. Vance said in Munich. Fellows, you're on your own as far as defense is concerned. We're not going to defend you anymore, period. He told it bluntly. So that's my first point. Europe is now on its own when it comes to defense. That's my first point. Second point. Let me go a little further. We have a Russian-Ukraine war. In that war, what happened? We Europeans, being very smart, decided we're not going to buy the energy or the commodities coming from Russia. I don't know why, but they're bad guys, so we don't buy their stuff anymore. Which means that the Russians suddenly can sell their goods only to China, which makes them uniquely vulnerable. So since they are anything but stupid, they open massive vertical south-north roads to India, which means for the first time ever in human history, India has access to all the commodities produced northern of Himalaya, and they pay in their own currency. Which means what? Which means that we're going to have the biggest boom that the world has ever seen in the Indian Ocean. Okay? That's the second thing. The third thing that you're going to see, and it's totally obvious, is that the dollar was a reserve currency of the world. We all needed dollar in our foreign exchange reserves, not because they made products that we wanted to buy, they didn't, but because we needed the dollars to buy our oil. It was negotiated between the American president and Ibn Saud in 1947 on the war boat in the Gulf, that basically if you want to buy oil, you have to pay dollars. And the guys that tried to break that rule have very long, very short life expectancies. Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, they disappeared pretty quickly. Basically, they were killed in no time at all. And suddenly, the Russians have broken that rule, which means that now China is buying the oil in renminbi, which means that the $8 trillion of foreign exchange reserves that the central banks have in their foreign exchange reserves are useless. What are they going to do with this $8 trillion? That's absolutely useless. It's paper money. What are they going to do? It's an interesting question. Now let's go a little further down. India is booming. Now you have something, if you do a little bit of geopolitics, which is called the Valéry-Pierre circle. You can Google it if you want. Valéry-Pierre circle. It's a name of a pseudonym for a geographic guy in Texas. It shows you that you put the 3,000 miles circle around Hong Kong. If you do a big circle like that, 60% of the world population, 70% of the world growth, and almost 90% of the excess savings. Yeah, they all have current account surpluses, these guys. We all have current account deficits here. The US is massive. Europe is massive, except Germany, who sells cars and nobody is buying anymore. So, you're going to have a boom in this circle. And it will network. You see, if I want to establish a line of communication between this pen and this glass, I need one line of communication. The paper, 3 lines of communication. This paper here, 6 lines of communication. If you want to establish n lines of communications between cities in the region, you will say that you need to establish n times n minus 1 divided by 2 lines of communication. You're going to have the biggest, to use my own terminology, Ricardian growth, Ricardo, better use of land, labor, and capital in this part of the world that the land has ever seen. But they had excess savings. They put these excess savings in our bond market. So we had massively low interest rates because the guys, their savings too much. Now, if they start to use their savings to develop their bond system, it's going to be a little bit of a problem. Our interest rates are going to go through the roof, our real interest rates. And then France and the US go bust because the service of the debt becomes unserviceable. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the world is not anymore the US discussing with Europe. The world has moved massively. And the center of the world, the future of the world, is going to be a triangle that will go from Moscow, Beijing, to Delhi. This is the future of the world. And these guys are going to develop like crazy, not using the US dollar, because the US dollar has proven not to be a reliable currency. The Americans can decide suddenly that they put you in jail because you did something that they didn't like. So the new center, financial center of the world is going to be Hong Kong. And in 10 or 15 years' time, Hong Kong will be much bigger than Wall Street. So not only is the economic system of the world moving, but the financial system of the world is changing completely. And it will be probably, strangely enough, the Chinese are lucky guys. They have the Hong Kong, and they have the Hong Kong dollar, which is pegged on the US dollar. So now, you know what all the Chinese companies do? They put all the excess money that they have made selling in the US, they put it in Hong Kong dollars. $2 trillion there of US dollars. So it means that Hong Kong will be able to lend Hong Kong dollars equivalent to the US dollar without asking the permission of the Federal Reserve. It's Hong Kong dollar. So the end of the legal control of lending in US dollar is now in China. So we should perhaps think a little bit about that before talking about what we should do. What I mean is that, let me be clear, the Finns have a very nice proverb. This is, if you don't have an army, if you don't have an army of the country in the country, you have the army of the country next door. Because the Finns know they are on one side, the Swedish on the other side, the Russians. So basically they've been fighting forever. So the European army for the last 50 years has been the US army, country next door. What I heard, telling my friends, is that the US army has decided that not interested anymore. So who is going to be the army in Europe? Who? You have only 2 candidates, Turkey or Russia. Make your choice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, are you, not as a politician, but as an economist, as an expert, are you buying those arguments you've just heard on tariffs, on trade deficits, trade imbalance, and all the geopolitical picture that has been described here? Are you buying this, or agree or disagree with that?
So, thank you very much. First, I would like to make a short comment on Chris. You know, we have Chris was really a legendary person in the American conservative movement, and I was privileged to be with him many times on many conferences he organized, and especially his famous Beaver Creek conference. And every year it was absolutely perfect with one problem. The conference was in the middle of June, but we, all of us who love skiing, would have enjoyed to come to Beaver Creek in January, but Chris, you were wrong in making the date of the conference, and many other places. But I have one problem. Chris suggested, or implicitly suggested, that there is a fundamental difference between the United States and Europe in thinking, in looking at the world. I am not so sure. Let's imagine it's the 12th of April 2024, and we are sitting here in the same room. At that moment, it wouldn't be possible to make such a speech by an American. America was absolutely hopeless a year ago. We said, I would say, I've never planned to visit America again. It's a hopeless country. The victory of those progressivism, multiculturalism, and so on and so on. So, how is it possible that it just changed so much by one person in one moment? This is a very debatable situation. So I am not so sure that it has been done already in America, and I expect a dramatic resistance to Trump's policies when, in the moment when all those shocked by Trump's victory will return to their senses and would to really start to behave politically. So it's not possible, Chris, to change the country by one person's victory in presidential elections. I always say that Trump succeeded in shattering the world, in shaking all of us, and gave us a chance to do something similar here. But as you describe it, different worlds, different eras. It is not so. So I think that America remains very problematic even after Donald Trump's victory, and the conservatives are divided, spoiled. There are fundamental disputes among the classical, more or less classical conservatives and the national conservatives of Hassani and John Fonte and those. So this is my short comment to Chris' presentation, but that could ask for a long discussion. The economic problem, I published this morning a piece, an article in Mladá Fronta. Some of you may have seen it, where I expressed my interpretation of Trump's policy. I think that he is right, he is correct, he has a rational vision, even though individual measures look like chaotic changes done from yesterday to tomorrow. I hope that what Trump is doing is an attempt really to change the attitude of other world players by his measures, which most of them are still just this point for negotiation, not a fundamental decision. I read recently a piece in the European Conservative. Some of you may know the quarterly published here in Europe by our friend Fantini. very nice Italian-American or American-Italian, I don't know, American-Italian or Italian-American who lives in Vienna. That's a very, very, very interesting combination of capabilities. The world makes a tragic mistake by not differentiating what are Trump's negotiation suggestions and what are Trump's real decisions. And when we jump every day on commenting his moves, well, I'm afraid we are missing the whole perspective. And Trump made it very clear that simply he doesn't want to see the deindustrialization of America, and what he needs is to really change something with the value of the dollar, and he doesn't have in his hands Fed, the central bank. He has in his hands tariffs. So he's using the one instrument he can use, and so. But that would be a long discussion about all of that. I'm sure the audience is not interested in listening to anything like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have about 10 minutes remaining, so maybe it's the right time to try to open the debate to public.
No, you should say something fundamental, because you are put here not as a moderator, but as a panelist.
Yeah,
so
I wanted to make my position easier, just to run the show and not to say anything.
You should give a synthesis of all we said.
That would not
should
be
summarize it and say who was right and who was wrong. That's what is expected from you. Don't disappoint us on please.
Yes, but before that, if there is any question from the audience, I would still let them to do that. Identify, please, who you are and whom you want to address. There is one hand, there is another hand, so two questions. And if there is any microphone available,